Committee.
Deputy Karen Wilson, member of the panel.
Fee Jacob Career, lay member.
Philip Taylor, lay member.
Lim Hamill, Controller and Auditor General, Independent.
Yeah, and Deputy David Ward will join us shortly.
Lindsay Wood, Chief Executive of Andium Homes.
And Peter Stiles, Chief Finance Officer, Andium Homes.
Thank you. And we have reviewed the Memorandum of Understanding when the Andium Home was established in 2014 and the recent one, which had been updated in September 2025. Would you please specify what objective changes happened over this 11 years since the first Memorandum of Understanding?
So the Memorandum of Understanding from when we first were established to now has changed in the sense that it specifies the relationship and it's more prescriptive than it was before, but Andium Homes' objectives have remained the same since we incorporated, which is the delivery of affordable housing and ensuring that those homes meet the Decent Homes Standard and that we're providing homes that the other needs to service the Affordable Housing Gateway rental list and the Affordable Purchase Pathway purchase list. Although the wording has changed and the specific parts of the requirements of the relationship interactions have changed, in concept it's the same.
Was it led by ministerial policy or it was led by your board and the representations from Andium?
It was a collaborative process to ensure that the Memorandum of Understanding met the Corporate Governance Code and the recommendations set by CNAG as well. And just it became more formalised over time.
Can you give specific examples?
So an example of that would be the manner in which we liaise with the guarantor, with Treasury. So in the very first MOU, it specified that we should have quarterly meetings. In the current MOU, it specifies we have quarterly meetings, and it also specifies what would be on the agenda of those meetings, which would be a review of our strategic business plan and our KPIs, our risk profile, and we also operate a no surprises approach so that we have very open dialogue. In practice, those things were already happening, but the new MOU formalises those.
What collaboration do you have with the Housing Gateway? How the process work between you and the Housing Gateway?
So all of our rental homes are allocated through the Housing Gateway. So our lettings team are working regularly with the Gateway team, and we also work with them to extract statistics from the team. And we're regularly working with the Housing Minister on the policy side as well.
Does it mean that Housing Gateway can direct to you, according to your engagement, who to prioritise?
So we will use the criteria set by the Gateway to inform our lettings. So we'd be letting to people based on housing need and also prioritising them based on the band that they're in. So obviously prioritising band 1. If there are specific cases to be escalated, the Housing Minister has the ability to escalate those.
Housing Minister, okay. Can you take us through the achieving objective 7.1.5, 7.1.6? Its objectives create long-term value for the guarantor through a supporting government to Jersey wider policy objectives by prioritising in full engagement with the activities agreed by the policy lead. So how you are planning to increase long-term value for guarantor, which is State of Jersey?
Okay, so I think that's already happening and will continue to happen. So one of the ways we create value for government is the return that we pay to Treasury each year. So since we're incorporated, we've returned over 300 million back to Treasury from our rental income. And we're also, all of our activities, we're a delivery agent for government policy. So we are providing value by housing the 10% of islanders and investing in the quality of the homes.
I mean, the first one, the Andium was set up, it was set up as to ensure affordable housing and to improve the affordable housing stock, which for rental. It was not for new homes for sale.
That was part of the proposition in P33 2013, there was a programme, a development programme put in place to meet the demands, or to seek to meet the demands of the rental gateway and also the purchase requirements.
Okay, now you thought we have Andium as a developer. You probably heard from the previous public hearing. We have SOJDC is developing, also developing affordable housing. We have Port of Jersey going into some development, and obviously we have government. How the four state-owned entities, or 3 state-owned entities working together on the developer function?
Yeah, so I took on the role of Chief Executive about 6 months ago, and since that time I've liaised regularly with the other Chief Executives of the state-owned entities, and we very regularly speak to government as our owner, and the role of each of us is very, very different, but where there is residential development with the other entities, we would be talking about how Andium could support that and how we could manage those works collaboratively.
Was your development will be included in the plan that government should present to the construction
Yes, the
industry
pipeline,
in
yeah.
December?
Yes,
So you
that's
will
right.
be incorporated and
Yes.
it will be aligned?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Every PAC meeting has to concentrate on people's remuneration, I'm afraid. So how is remuneration policy set for Andium?
Is that for the executive
Particularly
directors?
yours, finance officers and the senior people in the organisation?
So obviously in accordance with the Corporate Governance Code, I'm not a decision maker and Peter's not a decision maker in terms of our own remuneration, but there is a robust process in place that meets the requirements of the Corporate Governance Code, and that includes our Remuneration and People Committee reviewing our performance and considering the remuneration for the next period. That is then reviewed by the board, and then there is final sign-off by the guarantor.
And that's discussed with, as far as you know, is discussed with the housing department or the ministerial department, whichever it is.
The Treasury Minister.
The Treasury Minister. Okay. And in terms of performance bonuses, how does that process work?
Again, it's not a decision by myself, but like anyone else, I have objectives at the start of the year, which are agreed with myself and the board, and also with Treasury, and then my performance against those objectives is assessed at the end of the year.
So having dealt with your particular situation, how does it work for everybody else in the organisation?
So we have a remuneration policy in place, which is overseen by the Remuneration and People Committee, and senior members of the team, their remuneration is set by is approved by the Remuneration Committee, and the wider colleagues are reviewed by the executive directors, and in overview, collective terms are reviewed and approved by the Remuneration Committee and the board.
As regards the board as a whole, how many non-executive directors do you actually have?
I think it's six. Six. Am I
That
right?
seems quite
Yes.
a lot.
They all have very different skill sets and bring something different to the table, and they're ultimately to provide strategic direction and oversight for the company as a whole.
If I was to look at a UK public company who was in the business of developing property and residential properties, they wouldn't have 6 non-executive directors, would they?
If I was looking at housing associations in the UK, they would likely be a similar size or sometimes larger in the ones that I've seen.
And their remuneration is determined by...
There is a process for their remuneration as well, which involves sign-off by Treasury, is my understanding.
Lindsay, I've been asked that if you can a bit speak up, because I receive a feedback that it's difficult to hear online.
Okay, is that better?
Okay, and in the room as well, kind of, because its room is echoing.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, thank you, yeah. More?
Okay, so now we're moving on to key deliverables. What are the key deliverables that you've delivered in the last 2 years, should we say, 2 or 3 years, that you're most proud of?
That we're most proud of? Well, we've got a lot of deliverables that we're proud of. So this year alone, we've delivered 307 new homes across our estates, our new developments at Maison Les Arches by the Grand Marché, and also the Mayfair Hotel. And we've also entered into contracts to deliver a further 600 homes from this point, including the development of 4 of the island plan fields, which will deliver 250 family homes. We've also successfully and efficiently let those homes, and we've created a number of homeowners. We've created almost 600 homeowners since we were incorporated, and we have many more products
Okay, so
available.
in terms of the deliverables you hope to achieve, which ones didn't go as well?
Well, there's always challenges along the way.
I know.
That's a difficult one to say. I mean, it's certainly a challenging environment, but we stress test our deliverables, and so we're sort of prepared for that environment. The
But
financial
you'll have your KPIs that you agreed in terms of outcomes with the government. So what are the outcomes that perhaps weren't as you would anticipate them to be?
So in the last 2 or 3 years, particularly, Andium's been faced with a number of major incidents, including the flood at Gronvo and Storm Ciarán, and that did impact our ability to let homes as quickly as we would have liked. So during that period, our transition between tenancies, which we aim to keep within 25 days, did go over target. But we've brought that back in target now.
Okay, so on the whole, it's been pretty good.
It's been a challenging period, but the results are good.
Now,
Yeah.
I've got to ask both the chair a question. Am I doing this one as well?
No.
So how do you meet the principles set out within the Public Finance Manual, and how do you monitor your performance against them?
So the Public Financial Manual doesn't apply to Andium Homes, but we do meet the general principles of it, and the reason why we don't follow it specifically is because it has different escalation and different approval mechanisms. For example, certain things will be escalated to the Treasurer within the Public Finance Manual, whereas in our case it would be to the CFO, for example. So we have our own company policy manual, but when we're developing that policy, we look at the Public Finances Manual as well.
So then what internal processes ensure compliance with financial governance standards in that sense?
Sorry,
What internal processes you have to ensure compliance with financial standards?
with our policies and also accounting standards, we have a robust policy manual, and we also have our annual report, and we have that audited to ensure that we're meeting the requirements of the financial reporting standards and make sure we obtain a clean audit report. And our policy manual, to ensure that we're meeting the policies within that, we have a number of robust processes such as financial scheme of delegation and approval limits, and ensuring that there's good segregation of duties within all our procedures.
And how do you address any audit recommendations in that sense?
When we have recommendations from auditors, we look at them and decide if we're going to adopt them. So we, like with most companies, we receive an audit report with the findings from the audit, and we'd look at any recommendations and address those within the company. The next year, when the auditors come back, they would assess how we've adopted those recommendations.
Okay. So how is your organization then aligned with to island outcome indicators, and how do you measure your contribution to that?
So everything we do is in response to government policy. So our whole business plan and our delivery is built around government policy. So predominantly for us, that's affordable living, but it's also vibrant and inclusive communities. We also play an important role in the health and well-being of the people living in our homes, including children, of which there are many living in our homes. And we also contribute towards the built environment with our development plan. So when we're developing our business plan, we develop KPIs that go along with that, including the number of new homes, our homes meeting the decent home standard, and the efficient letting of our homes, and the creation of homeowners, for example.
So yes, what data or KPIs, as you mentioned, are used to demonstrate progress against these indicators? If you can give some examples.
Well, in terms of affordable living, for example, it's how we're providing the new homes and ensuring that our homes are fully occupied and that our homes are let through the Affordable Housing Gateway.
And how do you report this? How you communicate to government and to the public these results and measures?
So we report that to Treasury and to our board on a quarterly basis, and then we provide a quarterly report to government that includes results against those KPIs, and those KPIs are also reported in our annual report.
Thank you.
Okay, Lindsay, could you tell us how regularly you meet with government and what format the meetings take?
So the MOU specifies that we meet with government once a quarter, and that would include Treasury and housing representatives, and that is a formal part of our interactions. In reality, we meet much more frequently than that, and at various different levels within the organisation. So I meet monthly with the Housing Minister, and that includes the Andium Chair joining us and officers from time to time. And I'm regularly in contact with the Head of Shareholder Relations at Treasury as well. And amongst the Andium team at different levels, officers are meeting regularly with the Housing and Treasury teams.
And how do you manage the relationship between the policy directives that are set by the Minister and your relationship with government, your stakeholder relationship with government?
So is that between the housing policy and Treasury? So Treasury are our guarantor, so they act as our shareholder. So we meet with them on a regular basis and are accountable to them. But our role is to deliver government policy and specifically housing policy. So we find the balance in terms of how to do that. So, for example, we will apply the rent policy set by the Housing Minister. We'll be looking at the Investing in Jersey initiative and how we can play our part in that. And holistically, it's a very collaborative process between Andium, the Housing Minister, and Treasury. An example of that is that Treasury are required under the MOU to approve our business plan each year, and their approval would come after them seeking the Housing Minister's approval of the plan.
And have there been any times when collaboration has been difficult to achieve your objectives?
Well, it's a complex environment in terms of delivering homes and servicing the needs of the island, which there are complex needs, and it's a complex environment at the moment. But the important thing is that we're maintaining a really collaborative approach to our discussions, and that has been very positive.
So what you're saying is that there's never a time when you can't collaborate.
I haven't had an experience where we couldn't come to a solution together, even if it's a complex matter.
Okay. In terms of the way in which you manage your public service obligations, can you just tell us how you work on that basis, what you're required to do? Your public service obligations. Do you have a public service obligation agreement at all?
I'm not familiar with that terminology.
Okay.
If you could explain it a little bit.
So do you have, in terms of what your contract for services is with government, how does that work? What are you obligated to do for government?
Well, we work, our business model is entirely being a delivery agent for government. One of our contractual arrangements with government is to deliver a financial return to government each year, which currently stands at £29 million each year. That is a contractual obligation. We also have obligations within the MOU whereby Treasury are required to approve certain things that we do. So we would only enter into contracts for development or additional borrowing, and we'd only finalise a business plan once we've had Treasury approval for each of those things, each of those matters. So there's that level, and also on a regular basis we are working with other agencies, supporting people into our homes and supporting successful tenancies once in those homes.
And on average, through how many times a year do you have to go back to Treasury for approval?
That does depend on how many contracts we're seeking to enter into. So for formal approvals, there would be an annual approval of the business plan and also the annual report, any new projects and any new borrowing. So the projects and the borrowing is more ad hoc.
Okay, and just finally for me, in terms of the governance arrangements between yourself and government in relation to providing emergency accommodation, could you just explain how that works and how you manage that?
The homes that we let will be to in priority order on the gateway, so it's not we don't classify it as emergency accommodation. So emergency accommodation is generally provided by agencies such as Shelter Trust, Frida, Sanctuary Trust, but we work very closely with those agencies to help people transition into permanent tenancies with us. And when we let those tenancies, it will be in priority order. So those in the most urgent need would be housed first.
Mm-hmm. And have you done any evaluation around the way in which people experience that whole sort of scenario around trying to actually get a home under emergency situation? Because I've personally experienced through some of my constituents some issues that have been problematic for them.
Issues with Andium?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'd be interested to hear more from you about what difficulties they've experienced. Certainly once they're on the gateway list, we can then support them into a suitable home. We do work very closely with other agencies, and we are here to provide homes for the people who need them the most. So if there are cases where you feel people have had concerns, it's really important that we hear that feedback so we can act on it.
I would like to ask some follow-up just to understand about the mechanism between Andium and the government, because we are looking into the relationship and governance arrangement with government, between Andium and government. Recently, the statistics were published about the number of families or single parents that classed are as homeless. I think it was 15 that currently are in the hotel. So, for example, and it can happen very, very quickly through the domestic abuse, single mother found with the child, homelessness, and they would put in the hotel. Obviously, it's government responsibility. It's coming to the government. Do you hold emergency accommodation stock, for example? Because when the situation has happened, this particular people by the government can come to an and you said, we have emergency accommodation, take care of them. Or as a first point of call, or the government probably first go to the home. How does it work? How government will make a decision when they get a telephone call at 10 o'clock at night on Saturday evening that they have an emergency? Do they go first to Andium, or will they go first to hotel?
So if it's, we don't hold accommodation specifically categorised as emergency housing, so we're providing permanent tenancies to people to live in our homes for a long period of time, or as long as they want those homes. What we will do is prioritise those cases. So once they're assessed as meeting the criteria by the gateway team, we will be able to house them very quickly because of the amount of new homes that we're delivering at the moment. So we've had the 307 new homes this year, plus we have a natural turnover of about 300 homes each year. So we can house people who meet the criteria.
So if I got it right, so unless it's gone through some process of the assessment, on the day of the emergency, government would need to go to other agencies or other not to Andium.
On the very temporary basis, yes.
Oh,
Then,
what?
yes.
Okay, I'm talking about the emergency. For me, it's emergency. Obviously, if somebody in the band 1 and they in shelter, trust accommodation, they have. But this is what we're trying to establish if there is any arrangements for this particular. But
What do you see as the standard for an emergency response?
For an emergency response, well, there's a difference between the emergency response and the offering of a permanent tenancy. So our role is to offer the permanent tenancy. If we're asked to provide emergency housing, we can look at how to respond to that. But our role at the moment is to provide permanent tenancies to people in the gateway. So we can prioritise people in those urgent situations and house them very quickly. And we had an example of
What does that
someone
mean, very quickly?
in a matter of days.
Days?
Yes, yeah. At the moment, because of the level of new delivery that we have, and because of the we will, because of the high priority, we will be housing people, yes, in a matter of days. The waiting times for social housing have reduced significantly in general terms, but for emergency accommodation, it would, such as that, be very quickly.
If you have enough stock, why we still have 200 plus, I think 250 plus, maybe even more, don't remember number, but it's definitely in excess of 200 people on band 1. So I'm trying to think if the band 1 of the Getaway holding, I think it's just under 300 people, and you have a stock, why our band 1 is so extensive?
Or band 1, so there was a headline in the JEP recently suggesting that there was a 3-year waiting list for social housing, which was looking at statistics over a 5-year period.
No, I'm talking about the latest statistics, how many registered on
Yeah.
band 1, not about the waiting time. Let's wait the waiting time.
Yeah. Well, the just to finish that point is the waiting times have come a long way in general terms, and also specifically in band 1. So the biggest demand we have currently is for 1-bedroom accommodation, and we're housing people generally within 4 months for 1 beds in band 1. For 2 beds and 3 beds, it's much quicker. 2 beds, it can be within a couple of weeks, but the average waiting time is 3 months at the moment.
So 4 months for 1 bed, and you have
For 2 beds, it's in band 1, it's an average of 3 months.
3 months for 2 beds,
Yes,
and for 3 beds.
less than a month.
Sorry, can I just ask, why does it take so long?
Well, it's waiting for the accommodation to become available. That's the average. If it's a very urgent case and it's prioritised as very urgent, it would be much quicker than that.
But the issue is supply. So if you're saying that the supply is greater, then why do people still wait as long to actually be accommodated if the supply is already there?
The supply is increasing significantly, but if you think over the 5-year period, the average was 5 years, and it's come down to an average of 3 months for 2 beds. That is a significant change in the
That's because your
landscape.
supply has gone up. So my question is, you've expanded the supply. So what you've said is that actually that should be a solution to having permanent accommodation quicker and sooner. But my question is, why does it still take 3 months to get there?
As an average, 3 months waiting for social housing has come a long way. So if we had enough stock that people were coming and going off the list immediately, we would need to continue to deliver, which we are, but that's the wait time at the moment based on the supply that we've delivered.
And do you see that coming down?
Well, that depends on how the list evolves. So because of the additional supply that we've delivered, the criteria to join the list has broadened. It's still let in priority order, but the criteria to join has broadened, and that means that people have more choice now to seek social housing on the island, which has provided opportunities to many more people. But we'd still prioritise those in band 1.
Okay.
Just staying with that topic a little, I seem to recall that when the housing reform was put into place and Andium was created, there was a long debate about benchmarking. And I just wondered whether there's still a benchmarking exercise being conducted, so there might be comparison points on waiting times that you could talk to.
Well, the waiting so we do benchmark. So there's an industry body in the UK called Housemark, and we benchmark our results against those wherever possible. The waiting times are a gateway function rather than an Andium function, so we don't have a performance indicator against those. But I think generally reading the news and knowing about social housing in the UK, the waiting times would be considerably longer in the UK generally than they are on the island here.
And of course, yourselves, you produce an annual report every year, but the Gateway, I don't believe that does produce that benchmarking report.
I don't know. So they do produce a monthly report on the statistics on the Gateway, and I think they're looking at developing that reporting.
So that might be something that could be looked at in future elsewhere. Okay, and back to your own governance arrangements. Is there a process set in place if there was a feedback or a method for raising concern between yourselves and your shareholder?
So is there a mechanism for
Yes,
those?
a formal process that should be followed if there's a concern or issue to raise.
So an example of that would be something happening that Andium was. Could you explain the question? Sorry.
Yes. So if the shareholder has feedback or a concern to raise, so say for example they feel that part of the MOU there's a lack of performance, and this is just as by means of example, what process should they follow?
Right, okay, so that's very much part of our regular dialogue. So they would see our performance in our quarterly reporting, and when we meet quarterly they would be passing comment on that. If they were concerned about performance, they would be speaking to myself and the CFO, and also to the board as part of their oversight role.
And would there be a transparent process for reporting that from the shareholder's perspective?
Yes, so we would deliver that quarterly report with all those results to the shareholder, and the results are also reported in the same way in our annual report, which is a public document.
Thank you.
And has feedback from shareholders resulted in any recent governance changes?
I can't think of any at the moment. I mean, it's a very iterative and collaborative process. I can't think of any specific ones at this moment, but I can consider that and come back.
Yeah, just around the build programme, obviously I'm quite familiar with where you were going with this. The objective assessment of housing need was the original sort of, I guess, point at which Andium's delivery programme was put in place, and obviously it's a 10-year programme and you're doing this. Do you think there's enough flexibility in that for you to adapt to the changing need? Because obviously we've built significant numbers of twos and ones. There's obviously these family homes being developed, and I know you are developing some of them. Is there any mechanism in which says we've got to stop building twos and ones in your program, you know, to adapt to the changing market conditions? How do you react to that, or is your reaction just to simply sell off property to accommodate that rather than rent it? Is that a solution for you?
So our build programme is obviously there's an element of time because it takes several years from planning to homes being delivered, but our build programme is fundamentally there to react and respond to the demands of the rental gateway and the purchase pathway demand. So we'll be looking at how to adapt our delivery off the back of that. So what we know is there is a lot of demand for one beds for rental, and we've delivered a lot of one beds, and we've now broadly satisfied the demand for two beds for rental. But we also know there's a lot of demand for family homes and particularly and a lot of demand for purchase. So we'll be looking at the homes that we're delivering and determining the tenure as we get closer to completion. And on the island plan fields, for example, where we are transitioning now from delivering apartments in town to family homes on the island plan fields, there'll be a mix of rental and purchase opportunities.
One of the reasons, though, you presumably are selling more property now as opposed to, because historically you used to sell your sort of used homes, as it were, to top up the budget and make the budget happen. Now you're selling new build homes, obviously on the Andium home buy schemes and etc. So the question is what you're seeing because of the change in the rental demand, is that forcing you then to start selling some of your stock because of that change in demographic, change in we're not seeing the population growing the way it was, etc., etc. But you've still got a build program which has still been set a decade ago. So you've got a big machine, and you've got to somehow divvy up those homes. Is that why Andium is now in the selling homes market much more than they were maybe 3 years ago, 2 years ago?
So we're selling more homes now because we're delivering more homes. So we sell.
But historically, you would have rented them.
The plan was always
to rent them.
to have a mix of
Okay.
rental and sale. So we sell approximately 60 of our existing homes
Yep.
each year, and that's all through a home buy. So this is creating
Sure.
home ownership opportunities for people who wouldn't be able to purchase in the private sector. And then with the new homes, initially we rented a lot of them whilst we were doing major refurbishments of the our existing stock of homes as well. But the plan was always to get to this stage and move to more of a model of rental and sale. And we know that there's demand for both of those tenures. So it didn't happen earlier because we weren't delivering enough homes, but it was always the plan that once we started to deliver more, that we would sell, provide more opportunities to buy.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just want to move on to your approach to identifying your strategic and operational risks. And could you talk to us your process and how you report this to the board and also to the stakeholder, to government?
Okay, so we follow the Corporate Governance Code, which sees us have obviously we have the the Treasury as our guarantor. We have the board, and we have a subcommittee of the Risk and Audit Committee, amongst other subcommittees, and then we have the team within Andium, led by myself and the CFO. The Remuneration Committee review our risk policy, and that is approved by board. Key aspects of that are maintaining a risk register and also an internal control function that we operate within the company. And we report the findings from our risk register and also the internal control function to the Risk and Audit Committee regularly, and also to the board regularly.
Okay, and what would you say are your top risks?
So our
three.
Top three. Well, we have a number of significant risks that we report in the annual report. Some of them are ongoing risks that we manage, such as the health and safety of the people in our homes, and business continuity and managing major incidents. Some of the more strategic risks are about monitoring changing government policy, because our whole business is built around government policy, notably the rent policy, and the risk of us not being aligned with government, because that is absolutely crucial to our business, and managing our growth as we're delivering lots of new homes. Also fundamental is managing our long-term financial stability.
Okay, and are there any examples out of those risks where risk mitigation strategies have been implemented following, a review of your risk profile?
Yes, certainly when we've had major incidents such as the storm, our mitigation at that point is to urgently go out and complete the works, and there is some risk in that, because we're expending more in our homes than we anticipated at that point, and that's something we've managed over the recent period, where we've encountered incidents such as that. We've also had changes in government policy. The rent policy was changed 2-3 years ago to an 80% rent policy, and the mitigation there was to work very closely with the Housing Minister and Treasury, and there was an adjustment made to the mechanism of our return that we pay to government as a mitigating factor, which partially covered the cost of that change in policy. So there's a number of examples where we will adapt the model to the environment around us.
Okay, and do you, in terms of your risk mitigation, do you lead that, or is that shareholder led?
We would lead that, so our responsibility is to manage the risks of Andium homes. but to be collaborate and be very transparent with government, and it's part of our ongoing communications to be talking to them in that no surprises approach. But we're, the Andium board is responsible for managing the risk.
So it's a shared risk approach that you're talking about.
Well, the risk is owned by the Andium board, but we collaborate closely with government to make sure that we're aligned.
Thank you. In terms of the, just want to move to the level of borrowing against current capital held. Can you just confirm what that is at this
The
moment
level
in
of
time?
borrowing.
Yeah.
So our debt at the moment is about 470 million.
And against what's your asset base again?
Our asset base is 1.4 billion.
Okay. And you're gearing on that?
So I have to do the maths, but it's about 35%.
It is about that. Well done. Yeah.
All right. And in terms of talking about the procedures for Andium borrowing any further funds, can you just tell us how that happens and in what way you go about that?
Okay, so we have a funding strategy in place. All our funding is taken out to enable us to deliver new homes. So we assess the level of borrowing required for each individual project, but we actually have an overarching funding mechanism, which is a more efficient way of borrowing money. So we're borrowing money for the whole capital programme in stages. And in order to determine how to move forward with that, we use independent financial advisors to provide advice on the best form of borrowing available to us. And that is then presented to our Risk and Audit Committee and our board. And there is approval also by Treasury before we can enter into that borrowing. And once we have those approvals, we'll go to the market and seek borrowing within the parameters of the approvals granted.
And do you get that arrangement in place only through obtaining the independent financial advice, or is there a time when you could just go straight to government to ask their advice on how you should actually raise those funds externally?
We do talk to government about what our plans are, and we liaise closely with the officers within government who are responsible for securing debt for government, so we leverage off that relationship and their experience. But the decision about the type of debt is formulated by Andium and approved by the Andium board, and then approval is secured from government, but it's us leading that.
So your financial burden, if I can put it that way, or risk is dependent on what the external borrowing conditions are as opposed to what guarantees government provide you, or do they align on that basis?
It's kind of all interwoven. So when we go out to the borrowing market, we don't go out with a guarantee from government,
Right.
but we do go out and explain our relationship with government, and that does influence the appetite of lenders, and therefore we're able to secure borrowing at very preferential terms, close to or very close to the levels of borrowing that rates that government can secure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the members? I have very quick two questions. What expectations for the further borrowing in 2026?
I'll have to hand over to you for that, Pete, now because I'm not
Yeah.
CFO anymore. So.
Yeah, so we're actually currently in a process of taking out some additional borrowing or expanding our existing revolving credit facility. So that's a relatively small top-up on that facility just to allow us to manage our treasury management policy, which determines the level of liquidity that we need. So this is not about a cash requirement. We have sufficient cash for what we're our capital programme, but we have a very prudent treasury management policy that looks at the level of liquidity. So that looks at our forward commitments of in-contract work and operational expenditure, and make sure that we have sufficient facility in place to cover that should we need to. The reality is the operational income, covers that in the short term, but it gives us that liquidity. So we're in the process of topping up that existing facility.
So now we have on your balance 432 by December 24. What will have on your borrowing balance by December 25 or by December 26?
So our existing revolving credit facility allows up to £250 million.
Yeah, but we are looking at total borrowing because any liabilities that we have with you, it's public liabilities. Doesn't matter if it's government borrowing or if it's external borrowing.
Yeah.
So we're looking on total
But
liabilities.
the actual
that we have.
drawn borrowing, it will be approximately £500 million, so £500 million by the end of this year.
Okay.
Um,
And 26?
26, it will go up probably another 100 odd million pounds in total. So the total facilities in place will be over 600 million, 627 million, I think,
Okay.
next year.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. And do you want to put letters? And another question, can you please, very specific question, do you follow any specific governance framework like King's 4 or ISO in your governance arrangements for Andium?
Government for our accounting or
As a connection, as your internal governance arrangements between the company and your board and with
Yeah,
the government. So,
so-
do you follow any
we
framework?
follow the corporate governance code.
Sorry?
The corporate governance
Corporate
code.
governance code. Okay.
There's just one question, just in terms of the way you spend money, is all of it invested in capital development, or what percentage of your investment from your shareholder or your guarantor is spent on supporting the development of communities and the enhancement of the community estate that you're providing for? Could you just give us an understanding of how that splits out?
So the majority of our borrowing is to fund the development of new homes, but we also invest significantly in the homes and communities that already exist, the 5,000 homes under management. So we've completed the major refurbishment of over 500 homes since we were incorporated, and we are developing a programme to further raise standards with more major refurbishments over the next several years. And we have operational expenditure as well in terms of community engagement activities and improving the places in between the buildings, investing in raising those.
And what contingency funds would you set aside for all of your portfolio to address ongoing things like maintenance and stuff like that?
So we invest approximately 18 million a year in the maintenance of our existing homes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time and thank you for your answers, and public hearing is closed. Thank you.
Thank you.